This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And listen, basketball season's close. That's a good thing. Football season, I don't want to. We're 4-3, and that's exactly what I had us at. This point in the season.
But the journey to getting there is, that you got to take that into account, right?
The team's better than I thought they'd be.
Yeah.
But we need to have some real conversations here.
Okay.
That's what
we're here
what
for.
I want to have on the show. We're going to have our buddy Barrett Baker on in the second segment of the show. He's going to keep it real as per usual, and we'll hear what he has to say. But you and I, Shane, need to have some real conversations in buy or sell. We're going to break it down step by step, and I know you're more analytical than I am, and so
Sometimes.
I believe so. And this is, we want to present both sides of the argument and let you, the listener, decide where do you stand with Arizona football going forward. But first, this is Buy or Sell presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. And Shane, tell us about what you're holding there in your hand.
The Legacy Series.
The video feed.
Yeah. The Legacy Series 40-ounce Ice Shaker. By the way, if you're not watching the video feed, you're probably listening on Apple Podcasts, which is fine. But we are video on YouTube, X, and Spotify if you want to catch us there. But if you're watching, you see this beautiful 40-ounce Legacy Series Ice Shaker that our buddy Chris Gronkowski was kind enough to send us. I need to check in with him to see if they got the licensing on the collar, because he sent us this special with the Juve logo on it, if you can see it. But I know they're working on that. But yeah, imagine getting one of these with a beautiful Juve logo on it. We got one in red and blue. So yeah, check them out for sure. Keep your drinks cold.
Or keep them warm if you so choose. All right, Shane, let's get into it. Buy or sell. Number one, breaking it down once again, step by step. Arizona football is better in 2025 than they were in 2024. Buy or sell.
Easiest buy in the history of this show. Look, the record,
okay.
the record isn't remarkably different, and that's frustrating. And we'll get to that in a moment. Mm-hmm. But anyone with a set of eyes can tell you this team is much improved from last year. Essentially, it's gone from one of the worst power teams in college football last year to an average power team, and just a couple plays away from being above average. Now, if you don't believe your eyes, believe the numbers, because they don't lie. Arizona was 14th in the Big 12 last year in total offense. They're 9th so far this year. They're 3rd in total defense in the conference compared to 13th last year. 8th in red zone efficiency. They were dead last in that category last year. Noah Fafita had 19 combined touchdowns last season. Already has 20 this year. That includes 2 on the ground. His passer rating is up 25 points from 2024. By just about every key metric, this team has improved. And that's all I'm going to say until we get to the next topic.
Okay. Shane, I want to admit I was wrong. I came on this show a couple weeks ago and said, does Arizona have a Noah Fafita problem? Noah's playing great football.
Yes, he is.
17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean, was 24 of 26 against Houston. He's playing really, really well in Seth Daigie's offense. That was a bad take by me, and I will own that one. This team is definitely better to this point. Through the first 7 games, Arizona football 2025 would beat Arizona football 2024. I think the team is
going away.
Team is better.
Yes.
Okay. 1A. A good chunk of of the fan base does not believe in the progress. Buy or sell.
Another easy buy. We've seen it on social media, and social media is not completely real life, but it does have it. It's an indication of where the fan base is at, and certainly more passionate fans. A lot of them are on social media, but it's crazy to think how just a couple plays that had gone differently would have fans in a completely different mindset from where they're at right now. Now, I don't want to go all philosophical, but I want to take a step back, Eric, and just for a moment to remember why any of us become fans of certain teams and certain schools in the first place. Okay. We have that emotional connection to the point where wins and losses actually impact our mood for the rest of the day or even beyond that. Okay. When our teams win, it's almost like a drug, and then you crave more of it. And then when we don't get that drug, It looked like we are going to get that drug, and we didn't. We get frustrated, and then naturally we look for someone to blame. The rational perspective, in my opinion, is that Arizona has objectively improved, and the fact that this team is 4-3, but not far from being 5-2 or 6-1, is a positive sign. But that doesn't provide us that gratification that we're looking for, right? And then when you couple that, and I think this is important as well, our rivals to the north are enjoying another big win against the top 10 team. It had a great year last year. They're having another good year this year. And you remember that was us just for a few weeks in 2023, just 2 years ago. And that was stolen from us. It just compounds the frustration and that fire everyone mentality, irrational as it might be. Now, is Brent Brennan the guy? I still don't know. I'm certainly more optimistic about it now than I was before the season began. But progress is measurably there. Yes, the wins have got to come, but this team is performing up to my expectations. I wanted to see a more competitive team that wins at least 5 games. That was my prediction for this year, and it was also kind of a goal for the team. We still seem to be on track for that, and maybe even a 6th win. That's still possible. Last week, I told you that I wanted to see Arizona respond positively after the heartbreaker against BYU and go on the road against a decent team at a wonky kind of time of day and win or lose, show some resiliency and some toughness. And they did. So the bottom line is, through 7 games this year, this team has met my expectations going into the season and even exceeded them in some ways. I know better than to try to convince anyone who disagrees with me otherwise, but that's where I'm at. I understand the frustration, but I think when you separate facts from feelings, which can be very difficult to do, including me, you'll have a much more positive outlook on where this program is headed if you're able to do that.
So I am concerned that obviously there's a chunk of social media that is anti-Brent Brennan and will never be Brent Brennan. So I don't know that it's fair to say a good chunk of the fan base is out. I don't know that that's fair, but there is a vocal part of the fan base that is out. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
I think, it's not encouraging when Oklahoma State and BYU games there's a ton of empty seats. It's not encouraging when there are $15 tickets that they're like begging people to sell $15 tickets to just about every game except for BYU all season.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign to me. So it leads to the next question, Shane. If Brent Brennan stays, ticket sales will continue to drop, buy or sell.
For the time being, I'll buy again. That'll probably happen, though. I think a lot, or at least some, depends on these last few games. Even getting to 6 wins in a bowl game probably won't move the needle much going into next season, especially if that includes another loss to ASU, which at this point probably it will. I don't think that's reason in itself to make a change, as long as you think the wins will come eventually, which is still the best tried and true way to sell tickets. So I agree with you that I'll buy the premise, even though I don't. We'll get to it a little bit more, but I don't think a change is imminent or needs to be made at this point.
So here's the question that you have to decide, Shane. If people are not going to buy tickets, and football is the sport that pays for the other sports, Blair talked about it last week on the show.
Yep.
So how do we $15 tickets don't really help the athletic department. They don't. So Brent Brennan may be improving and has a better team, but what's going to sell tickets? That is the question that I have. Is 7-5 going to sell tickets? Is 6-6 going to sell tickets? Is James Franklin going to come in and sell tickets? Billy Napier? What is going to sell tickets for this program? That's what I want to know.
And it's tricky because, even when Arizona was winning with Jed Fish in his final season, they were still struggling to sell out games. I remember before the UCLA game, Jed Fish commented during his press conference, there's still some seats available. I'm not sure how that's possible. It's like he was frustrated by it, and I understand why. But again, still, with that said, winning is still the best way to do it. But look, for people who want to make a change, I said this on X after the game against Houston, and I'll say it again. If Desiree Reed-Francois is going to make a change, she had better have a damn good plan in place. I'm talking like, you mentioned James Franklin, like luring Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri, that kind of thing. Probably not happening, right? So, okay, look, the progress is there, and fans may roll their eyes when I say that, but if they're being honest with themselves, they know it's true. And Arizona Athletics, and let's remember this too, Arizona Athletics is still trying to dig itself out of a massive financial hole. Unless the wheels just come completely off in the final 5 games, like kind of like they did last year, it's difficult for me to envision a scenario when starting over again at a football program that just simply lacks any national pedigree would be the better move financially long term.
But here's what it comes down to. Based on performance to this point, Brent Brennan should be retained. No, quite. You're not going to have any argument for me there. But when it comes to lack of ticket sales, what sells? That's what I want. Like, can somebody tell me if you don't have tickets, like what's going to make you buy tickets? If you're not a Brent Brennan guy, is Arizona hiring James Franklin going to say, "All right, I'm buying tickets"? Like when they brought in Sumlin after Rich Rod, and I was like, "All right, Shane, they're going to the Rose Bowl."
Uh-huh.
Like we know that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work.
Unless you're Deion Sanders, and that worked pretty well in Boulder, but that's that is a very exception to the rule sort of situation.
So if Arizona goes 5-7 or doesn't win another game, but is close in most games that it plays the rest of the year, you and I both know that next year nobody's going to buy season tickets. No fringe fan is going to buy season tickets.
Yeah.
And they're going to be selling $15 tickets, $20 tickets, begging people to go, and they're going to fill 30,000 seats, and that doesn't help. It doesn't help it doesn't help the athletic department at all.
I get it, but even if Arizona went 7-5, and then say they end up going 3-2 the rest of the way, and then they win their bowl game and win 8 games. I don't know if that's going to move the needle much either.
I think
so, because I go back to 2023 and it just something's changed. I don't know if it's because of just the ease of watching games from a big screen at home or what it is, but it's just not. It's not the same as it used to be. I mean, even during the Mike Stoops era and the Rich Rodriguez era, the success was very, the programs were very up and down, but there were times where that stadium was sold out and it was extremely loud, and we just seem pretty far removed from that now. And I'm not sure that, outside of, having an undefeated season, I'm not sure what's going to turn that around.
Do you think last year, if Jed had stayed, that tickets like that Arizona football would have sold out at least one game?
Yeah, probably. Just because I think they would have been a better team last year. So probably. I'm trying to remember back to 2023. Did they actually sell out any of those games? Because I mean, you were there for them. I was at a couple. I don't remember, like even like the Utah game when there was this another rainy game, and it was a fun game because they blew the Utes out. But that game wasn't sold out. I don't think it was even close to being sold out if I remember right.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Like I don't know. I'm trying to envision a scenario where Arizona Stadium is full to the brim with Wildcat fans, not with BYU fans or ASU fans or North Dakota State fans or whomever the opponent is. That like I want it to be the days of Oregon 2009 and Iowa 2010, where
or ASU 2014.
20 ASU 2014, even though it wasn't students, they were out, for Thanksgiving, where getting a ticket felt like, oh wow, I have a ticket to this game.
Yeah.
Like it was Arizona's Super Bowl. I mean, going to that Oregon game, the buzz around campus, the going to that 2014 game where both teams were around the top 10. Does Arizona have to be in college football playoff contention for that to happen? Is there any other way?
Maybe.
Do you have to give away tickets? Is that like what has to be done to make that happen?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. And that's Desiree's big challenge. And like to be clear, I'm not being critical of fans. I mean, I don't go to many games. I live up in the valley. I know you're a loyal friend and true. You go to just about every game, Eric, but I don't. So I'm not being critical. I'm not saying get out there when I'm not out there. I'm just observing that this is where we seem to be at. But yeah, I mean, Arizona's trying different, trying to lower some concession prices and like that the drone show they did against Kansas State, which you said was fantastic. I wish I was there
great.
for.
Yeah.
So they're trying, but it's just it's a head scratcher. It's like if winning doesn't do it, then I don't know what will.
if Brent Brennan makes a bowl game and wins at least two of his last five games, then this is not a discussion you roll with year three. You saw tangible progress.
Yeah.
If Arizona were to lose out the rest of the season and end the season on a 7-game losing streak, you probably have to make a change. Otherwise, you're not going to sell any tickets.
Well, regardless, certainly that discussion will be had. I mean, again, you look at what happened in Penn State. Going from losing an overtime heartbreaker at home to Oregon to 2 weeks later, your coach is gone. I mean, things change so quick. Like, I don't know any sport at any level where fortunes change more from week to week. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State was in the Final Four and lost on a field goal. They were that close to being in the national championship game.
Yeah.
And 6 games later, their coach is fired. Now, I know he had a history of not winning big games and whatnot, but you're right. What you just said is spot on. I mean, you look at all the changes. You're going to see Mike Norvell's going to be out at Florida State. 2 years ago, they probably should have been in the Final Four
Yes, they should
if their quarterback didn't tear up his knee. Obviously they had a bad year last year, but Billy Napier out in Florida, gone, big time job. But so I that's kind of a thing that I don't know about.
College football has really become more and more like if you follow pro soccer in Europe, where you can have like 3 or 4 straight fantastic seasons, and then like halfway through your next season you're losing, or like you lost 2 or 3 games in a row and you're gone just like that. It's like the second you start, it seems like it's getting more and more that way in college football. Not quite that cutthroat, but approaching that.
So we're just having the debate. You out there listening, you can decide as we can. We will see how things play out. Hopefully Arizona wins at least 2 games, gets to a bowl game, and we don't have to talk about this anymore for a while. So that's what I want. That's what we all want to happen. And if you get to a bowl game, you can sell progress. Hey, look, we made progress. We're gonna have Noah back. This is our year. We're gonna go big. And you give Brent Brennan a 3rd year and see what he does. If things go bad, then it's gonna get tough.
But again, I will give Arizona credit, because last year after a loss like that, Arizona would have lost at Houston by 3 or 4 touchdowns. And they hung tough. They couldn't get that last stop. But if nothing else, I was relieved to see the competitive spirit of the team, even though it was another very, very disappointing day.
Give me some additional thoughts on the Houston game.
Yeah, I think BYU showed teams the blueprint for beating Arizona, at least on defense, and that's just power football. You have a quarterback who can run and take a hit, and a good tailback and a big offensive line. You're probably going to beat Arizona this year as long as you take good care of the ball, which BYU did for the most part, and Houston definitely did. I think Arizona, again, they showed a lot of resiliency by tying the game late, but I think we had a good idea of how that game was going to end. Houston ran 12 plays on its final possession, ran the ball on 11 of them, nothing fancy. Arizona knew what was coming. They just didn't have the guys to stop it. Again, I think this is a very well-coached team, especially compared to last year. It certainly wasn't the case across the board last year, but if you don't have the talent and the size up front, you don't have it. And BYU wore down Arizona's defensive front late in the game. And Arizona still was a recovery away from winning that game. Then Houston did the same thing on Saturday. It was a simple formula. Arizona's a team that's going to depend on takeaways more than most in order to win the rest of the season. They're good at taking away the big chunk plays, but with offensive lines getting the pushes they've been getting against Arizona, teams have realized they don't necessarily need those big plays against Arizona anymore in order to move the ball. And I think that's the biggest challenge going forward.
I was impressed with the first 2 drives. I was not happy with the play calling after that. In the second quarter, it got better in the second half. But it's like Seth Doege, you have something that's working. You're throwing all over, and you 24 of 26 and still lost the game. Like, you should, I mean, I hate to say this, still scored 28 points, which is great, but like, probably should have scored more than that.
Probably.
Considering Houston showed no inclination to be able to stop the pass, and Arizona showed no inclination on defense, stop the run. So the short passing game was working. Use it as your running game. The time of possession was fairly equal. I was actually surprised. I thought Houston would have been significantly up more than that. I just, that's a game Arizona shouldn't have lost. It's just, That was a
Well,
heartbreaker.
especially because you get up early, you're up 7-0, you're up 14-7. You think, okay, well, finally, and then, but again, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, the very glass half full way of looking at it, which I'm generally not comfortable with at all. But the way of looking at it is, look, Arizona trailed by 14 against BYU, and they trailed by 14 against Houston, and they were still even. They had a chance to win both games. The BYU game, they I think they just flat out blew. The Houston game, they rallied and they came back and they just didn't get the ball back after they scored. But I again, the toughness, the resiliency, I don't question that this year, and I did certainly multiple times last year.
Were you the one that had said to me, Shane? I guess a few people have that it's almost worse losing a close game than getting blown out.
That was me.
Like the Iowa
Yep.
State game, you're like just
Yeah.
outclassed, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these last 2 weeks, Arizona should have won both games.
It's worse as a fan because you get more emotionally invested. Like if your team's getting its butt kicked, it's like the last hour and a half of the game, you can kind of just emotionally distance yourself, focus on other things you got to take care of during the day, whatever. But as opposed to a close game where you're emotionally invested for 3, maybe 4 hours, and then you just get let down. You don't get that high, that drug that I was talking about. It's really difficult. So no, I mean it's better from a team perspective for sure. It's more encouraging, but from a fan perspective, it's probably worse in a way.
Let's talk Arizona basketball for a second, and then I'll have a football question a little bit later on. We're going to obviously make picks. Arizona was picked 4th in the Big 12. Buy or sell? That's a fair preseason ranking for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm buying everything today. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, boy, I phrased them all wrong today,
Yeah,
didn't I?
no. Look, I don't care that much about the preseason poll, the coaches poll, but when you consider, Houston's reloaded, BYU has brought in some incredible talent, including the number 1 recruit in the country. Texas Tech should have made the Final Four last year. I think that's more than fair. And honestly, I think any team that finishes in the top 5 of the Big 12, maybe even the top 6 of the Big 12 this year, kind of like last year, they'll probably end up being at least a Final Four contender. Maybe not a favorite, but a team that can get there if the stars align. You get hot at the right time and you get a favorable schedule. So at this moment, and we'll change our opinions weekly like we did with the football program. But right now, there's no reason to think Arizona can't be in that category.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair ranking. I would have probably, I mean, top 5 for sure. By the way, it's great to see ASU last, isn't it? I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll see.
They are. I mean, I don't even know who's on their team. It's kind of funny. Nonetheless, I think Arizona should be really good. But I'm going to say what I said last year. The fan base is going to have an absolute cow when they lose close to or thereabouts 10 games.
Get used to
Because
it.
the schedule's that hard. They're going to have a cow,
Yeah.
and you know it,
Well,
and I know it.
well, even the non-conference notwithstanding, I mean, just the conference schedule. It's kind of like the Pac-10 was back in the mid '90s when Arizona won the national championship. They finished tied for 4th in the conference that year because the Pac-10 was that loaded, and now that's kind of how the Big 12 is.
Yeah, I mean, certainly something. What'd you make of their game against St. Mary's? I just saw highlights and I saw the box score. And I think what most encouraged me, Shane, was that they were able to pull away. The game was kind of, I mean, not really in jeopardy, but they had a killer instinct to them at the end. And they were playing without Tobe Awaka. Now,
Right.
an exhibition game, I understand, but this was an encouraging sign going into Florida on November 3rd.
Yeah. Well, side note to begin, they put the reserves in at the end when the game was no longer in doubt, and I felt bad for Bryce James because every time he touched the ball, the fans or at least the students were going like shoot, shoot. It's like the kid's got enough pressure, and so he ended up taking a couple bad shots in the last minute because I think he felt the pressure to do it, and he got fouled on one of them, and he made a free throw. But
Okay.
I hope he doesn't have to deal with that all season. But I love that Tommy Lloyd is scheduling tough games, even the ones that don't count. St. Mary's is always a good team and one that Tommy's familiar with during his time at Gonzaga, and they could meet again in the NCAA tournament for sure. Like what I saw from Jaden Bradley, 23 points. Mo Krivas was a rebound machine, 17 rebounds. He had about half the team's total rebounds. Braden Berries went 5 of 7 from the field. I'm interested to see, as Fran Fraschilla alluded to the other day, if Braden can become that sort of alpha for Arizona, the guy who wants the ball in his hands late in games now that Caleb Love is gone, or is that just too much to ask for a freshman? Biggest takeaway, though, for me, biggest takeaway / surprise, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, I probably am, was Ivan Karchenkov's role.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he looks like a rotation player, doesn't he?
He does. Like you said, Toby Awaka missed the game. Tommy Lloyd said he probably could have played if it was a game that counted. But Karchenkov is essentially the guy who Tommy Lloyd brought in after Carter Bryant declared for the NBA draft. He played 23 minutes, and he was in late in the game too when it was still in doubt. Like he was in there, I think, in place of Koa Pete. So I thought was kind of interesting. He had 9 points, couple of assists, shot 4 or 7 from the field. But if you can be that kind of contributor throughout the season, I think that could be the difference between Arizona going, say, 500 in those non-conference games, or even better than that, and maybe help Arizona get a couple wins against some of the really tough opponents they've lined up.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some things to look forward to for the Wildcats. Well, I believe they have another exhibition game, and then Florida a couple weeks from tonight, and we will break that one down before and after what we saw from that. The Wildcats schedule in November is just unbelievable. I mean, at UConn, basically at UCLA and Florida
Yeah.
on the. I mean, We're gonna have a lot to talk between that and the football team, Shane. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. But another thing that we have to talk about right now. Shane, standouts. What do you have for us?
Well, let's start with the volleyball team, which is now 5-2 in the Big 12 after a weekend road sweep of UCF and Houston. Neither are good teams, but Arizona still had to go and get the job done, and they did. They won both matches 3-1. Senior Jordan Wilson, who went to Hamilton High School, where all my nephews went to school. She
Wow.
had a combined 41 kills in those 2 matches. So next up for the volleyball team, they got another road game against Iowa State on Thursday. Then they come home to face ASU, which is a perfect 6-0 in the Big 12 this season. So that's going to be a big showdown that will hopefully bring a lot of fans to McHale Center. And then the other one I have for this week, Eric, a shout out to the Arizona men's cross country team, which won the team title and had 4 of the top 7 finishers at the Highlander Invitational at UC Riverside last weekend. I've been debating whether I want to actually try to pronounce a couple of the names.
Yes, yes,
Okay, I will.
that's
I
what
will
we
do
all
my.
want, Shane.
I'm going to do my best. Evans Tanui or Tanui,
Okay.
Tanui,
Okay.
and Lowy Negetich, Ngetich. They finished second and third overall. Bryson Nielsen finished 5th, and Michael Ermansky finished 7th. So shout out to them. And by the way, I just want to say I could have just ignored them for that reason, so I didn't have to pronounce the names, or I just could have said they had 4 of the top 7. But I showed a lot of courage just then, Eric, in trying to pronounce the names, even though I'm sure I butchered them.
I am very proud of you, Shane.
Thank
I'm
you.
very proud.
Okay.
Yeah, very proud. I want to bring up something else before we bring on Barrett Baker. So Florida has now fired Billy Napier. UCLA has now fired Deshaun Foster.
Yeah.
So those are 2 big openings. And our old coach's wife, I believe, has moved back to Tucson.
Yeah.
Shane, if you were to make a bold prediction in advance of us making college football picks later on, where will Jed Fish be coaching next season?
I would like to say I don't delight in Washington fans being very, very irritated with him and his non-answer at Monday's press conference about his future, but I do enjoy it. Earlier I was thinking the UCLA job is more likely, so I would say Pasadena. I think Florida is a possibility, but I'm not sure Jed's done enough at Washington yet to satisfy the Florida fan base on that one, even though we know how good a salesman Jed is. So maybe he can talk the brass at Florida into it. There's also, I feel like eventually Jed's going to end up back in the NFL. So maybe it's none of the above in terms of college. But I think UCLA just makes a ton of sense. Knows the program well, knows the area well. He and his staff have recruited California extremely well. So UCLA would be my guess at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Shane. I think UCLA makes sense. I don't think after watching what Jed did against Michigan and what they were how non-competitive they were, I don't think he is hired by Florida. I think as much as he wants that job, I just don't think that he gets it done or that they hire
Yeah,
him.
I think Washington fans this season are kind of screwed either way because either Washington goes like 7-5 again and go to a low-level bowl game, or say Washington finishes strong and wins 9 games, and then all of a sudden he's on Florida's radar. So either way, I don't I don't think that things are going to end well for them as far as Jet Fish goes. But some of them want him gone already. So
You know, You know what the term Schadenfreude means,
Oh
Shane?
yes, I was thinking of the word, but I didn't remember how to pronounce it. I'm glad that you did.
Schadenfreude, for those of you who don't know, means taking pleasure in the misery of others,
It's like those who hate ASU more than they love U of A.
which I never understand, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, I have to get to this read because it's important. As always, Wildcat Country is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino. And hey, Wildcats, ready for your VIP moment? Harrah's Auction Casino is giving Caesars Rewards members the chance to win the ultimate VIP meat getaway. Now through October 31st, that means you have less than 2 weeks. Your weekday play earns entries for the chance to win a 2-night stay, $250 in free slot play, $1,000 for dining, spa, shopping, and more, plus round-trip transportation play all week long. Then join us Friday for your chance to win your exclusive Caesars Rewards destination. Harrah's Auction Casino is the only local casino offering the only card that gets you to over 50 destinations. With Caesars Rewards, your play earns perks that can be used at those 50 destinations nationwide. Check it out. Get out there this week. Next week, Harrah's Auction Casino in Maricopa. Awesome place. We're going to have GM Mike Kintner on in a couple weeks. I believe he went to Kansas undergrad, Arizona postgrad. I may have that mixed up, but we're going to have him on before the game to break it all down with us. Coming up next, our buddy Barrett Baker joins us here on Wildcat Country.
All right, Wildcat fans, let's talk about crushing your workouts with the Ice Shaker 40-ounce Legend Series shaker bottle. It's made from kitchen-grade stainless steel, leak-proof, tough as nails, built-in straw, soft touch handle, and yeah, it keeps your drinks cold for a long time. I got mine in both Wildcat Red and Blue. Be sure to get yours at iceshaker.com.
It's another week, I guess, without Arizona football, but nonetheless, it's another week to bring on our buddy Barrett Baker, who is with the Tucson Fire Department and former special team standout at the University of Arizona. We always appreciate having him on the show. He is our Wildcat Country football analyst. When, as I said, we are always glad to have you on, Barrett. We're going to start with a tough one here. If the fans are out on Brent Brennan, whether fair or unfair, what happens next? How does Brent Brennan survive if the fans are out and they're not coming back?
Well, I think you gotta go week to week. And, I'm coming from a totally different viewpoint on this one because I can't believe that you would be out after looking at a team that is 4-3 and losing 2 heartbreaking losses with a combined record of the 3 losses being 18-3 of those teams. So if you are a bottom line fan where the only thing that matters is wins and losses, then you really need to support Alabama and that type of program. But if you're a fan that has to go along with the highs and the lows and support Mike Stoops and Rich Rodriguez and Kevin Sumlin and Jed Fish and take that journey to where you go from the bottom to the top, and then a lot of the times it's in the middle, then stay on, because that's what being a fan is. And when I hear this about, they're out, were you ever in if that's the case? Because if you can't see the progress in this program from last year to this year, then I don't know what to say. But I do know this: the internet is a toxic place. And there is a circular group of fans that no matter what Coach Brennan does, he's a bad coach. Right? So they were out from the get-go. And there is people that no matter what, they'll screen cap and say, look, when he was hired, I told you from day one that he wasn't the guy. So every loss that happens, those fans celebrate that. Where I think you should be supporting the team and supporting the 100 kids on this team that walk into a stadium at Arizona on a Saturday at noon and are embarrassed because of the fact that our fans have decided to be out this early in the program.
And I want to say this, Shane, before you cut in here. I got another email from U of A about $15 tickets for the Kansas and Baylor game today. If you're going to complain about ticket prices, now I got mine for those games. That's a great deal. If you can't afford $15 a ticket, I'm sorry. For those of you who can, and you are fans of the program and you live in Tucson and can make the games, no excuses. Go ahead, Shane.
Well, I'm going to get into some more positive stuff, Barrett, but I feel like the blueprint for beating Arizona, at least when they're on defense, is out, and it's pretty simple. It's power football. We saw it, especially toward the end of the BYU game. We saw it throughout the Houston game, especially on that last drive where Houston just went down the field and got in field goal range pretty easily. I just don't think Arizona has. I think they're a well-coached team that they execute things as well as they can. They just don't have the guys up front right now to handle, especially when you got a quarterback who can run over you as well as a running back. Is that the biggest weakness in this team at this point?
Yeah, that's a great point. And here's the thing about being a defensive coordinator. You never want to put on film where the chinks in the armor are. You never want to expose where you're weak on defense, because for the first 5 games of the season, we didn't put that on film. And offensive coordinators then don't know where to attack you. So with BYU, they showed that obviously with Bear Bachmeier as the quarterback, again, true freshman, but they keep it simple for him. And he was physical, and you've got physical men up front. Oftentimes BYU is a little more seasoned, right? You've got the missionary kids that come back 2 years stronger. And so that's exclusive to them. I was extremely shocked losing to Houston in the manner that we did. And again, it doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but when NFL scouts are at practice watching Trey Smith, and now we don't have Trey Smith to potentially help set the edge and blow up that's a loss. It's not an excuse, right? Because we need a little bit more time to find out where we're going to get that next Trey Smith. So here's the question then to me. Do you believe that Joe Salavea is going to be able to find those guys in either the high school ranks, the JUCO ranks, or the transfer portal to say that next year we need 2 more Tia Saveas, or we need another Deshaun McKnight, who have been productive for a good majority of the first 7 games? But your point is sound. Now Coach Gonzalez and the rest of the defensive staff have to correct what we just put on film over the last 2 games. And now Colorado's going to have that type of game plan, and Kansas is going to have the type of game plan. So until our defense snuffs that out and puts an end to it, then we certainly, to your point, we're going to have to prove it now.
Is that, Barrett, something that can be corrected, or is it just a matter of we just got to load up the box and hope they beat us deep? Because I think Arizona is very good at taking away the deep ball threats, and offenses have realized that. How, if you don't have the talent, you don't have the size. Let's just say for sake of argument that you just don't. How is there a way that you counter that for the next 5 games?
Well, I think again, which defense is more accurate? The one for the first 5 games, and again, Hawaii, they're 5-2. Are they? Now they obviously are predicated on throwing the ball, and that's a strength of ours, is defending that as well. We're very strong on the back half of the defense.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the front half, you got Tia Savea that's playing a lot of snaps. Palu, again, junior college kid coming in, he's making an impact. McKnight has been fantastic. Those are 3 guys that are contributing. Julian Savanea, he's a little bit more of a guy to come in and give you a blow. He's about 260, 270, explosive, but not quite as big. So I think that's the challenge that we're going to have. But I think if you listen again to Coach Gonzalez and Coach Brennan, the bigger issue that we've had, especially against Houston, is our missed tackle numbers skyrocketed. And I think we had 10 missed tackles in that game. And it doesn't sound like much, but if you miss the tackle and the running back gets 2 yards, he gets 5 yards when contact should have been 2 yards, that's a 3-yard difference. But when that happens repeatedly over the course of, you never know what's going to happen, but those yards add up. So I would probably say just as much as the physicality and the size up front, we've got to get back to being a very good tackling team. I read a statistic today, and I think Genesis Smith had 4 missed tackles in that game. That's uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
So when you are forcing a team to run, which is technically what you want, then you've got to be sound at tackling, and that's where Coach Gonzalez already talked about it, and Coach Brennan already talked about the fact that this week off, it's getting back to 11 guys flying to the ball with bad intentions.
Yeah, and I'll just, real quick, Eric, I'll just want to throw one more in here because I promised Barrett I would get to some positive stuff. And I said last week, I just want to see how resilient this team is after such a heartbreaking loss to BYU, a game that they had in their hand and lost. And I was impressed of how resilient they were. I know they didn't win, but they didn't lay an egg. They could have come out and gotten beat by 30 points, and they didn't. They took an early lead, blew it, came back in the 4th quarter. Is that progress in itself, not just in terms of talent, but in terms of just the attitude of the team?
When it's 28-14 last year, what happened?
Yeah.
28-14 became 42-14 real quick. 28-14 for us, and we battled back, and we scored the 14 unanswered on their territory to claw back into that thing, and we just needed one more stop. So I do think that there is a resilience to this team that we didn't necessarily have last year through various reasons. We've got good internal leadership on the squad, and again, we could be sitting here tonight talking about being 6-1 and how much progress this program has made, and you could probably pinpoint 4 or 5 plays that are unfortunately the reason that we're 4-3 right now. So the resiliency, it's going to be a week-to-week thing at this point, and it starts again. Get healthy, get refreshed this week, and you've got to be able to win at Colorado. And I'll give you a negative, which stop the presses here, right? The negative to me is we've got to figure out why we're not winning on the road, and that is an issue at this point, and that's got to be rectified. And I know, again, you look at everything when you're losing. You look at what we're eating on the road, our meeting schedule, when we're traveling. All of that is looked at. But that, to me, is something that has to be corrected, because when you go on the road, you got to be able to win occasionally. And right now, going back to last year and this year, we just haven't really performed very well on the road.
Barrett, let's talk about the play calling, because at the start of the game against Houston, it was great. Trey Spivey gets a 70-yard touchdown. You're like, this is awesome. Trey Spivey doesn't get another catch the rest of the game. Noah, 24-26, great. But I feel like we've seen 2 weeks in a row. The play calling gets good for a while, and then at the end of the game, I guess throughout the game, it's not getting better. Like against BYU, it kind of down the stretch was just like blah. Shane and I, we all witnessed that in person and in the elements. And then against Houston, you go up 14-0, and then the second quarter, you get no yards basically. What do you make of Seth Doege and what he's doing there?
Yeah, I'm still in because I'm going to go a little deeper than that. The first 2 drives, we score quickly. The throw to Trey Spivey, could you make the case that was almost lucky how Noah is able to escape? And then he threads one into Spivey and he breaks the jailhouse. So great start. Second drive, marched right down the field, and Luke Wysong breaks the dude's ankles, gets into the end zone. Third series, we had a penalty on that one. Penalties are offensive killers. Fourth series, we are marching efficiently down the drive. We hit Mizell on the slant pattern to the right side of the field, and we got a 2nd and 1 at midfield. And things are looking very promising. And we take 2 sacks back to back. So that killed that drive. The next drive, we are marching right down the field before halftime. And unfortunately, we have the 3rd and 4. We get 3 yards. We go for it on 4th and 1. And that probably changed the momentum of the game. But the second half, we had 2 possessions. We scored on 14. So if my math's not correct, we had 6 offensive drives. We scored touchdowns on 4 of the 6. Can't complain about it, right? 1 penalty, stalled 1 drive, a 3rd and 1 or a 2nd and 1 that we don't compare or we don't complete because we get 2 sacks. That's the second drive. And then the only other drive is the one where we don't complete the 4th down conversion. So, I think it's just where you're coming from. 2 of 3 on 4th down conversions. If we go 3 for 3, the outcome of the game might be different at that point.
Which loss makes you more mad, BYU or Houston? Why?
I still think BYU is probably the one that hurts a little bit more because of the fact that when you're up 10, you got to finish it.
Yep.
Houston, we're down 14, and again, it's repetitive. But the difference between winning and losing sometimes is so tiny. The touchdown that Houston scores before the half, you got a 6'7" tight end that is covered about as closely as possible. The quarterback throws an amazing pass. He bobbles it, and instead of hitting the turf, he's somehow able to corral it after the review. The touchdown to go up 28-14, right? We're down on the goal line. It's 3rd and goal. They play action. We are a quarter of a step away from sacking him. He throws a prayer into the end zone on the turf, and the guy's able to scoop it up. 2 plays there. If the replay officials somehow get back into this solar system and don't overturn the 3rd down pass to start the 3rd quarter, right? That is an incomplete pass 100% of the time. The receiver never has control. and that is a 3-and-out to start the third quarter. Instead, they get a first down. Now we have them in third. We're going to have them in 3rd and 8 again, and Bobby Wade gets called for what I read today was a phantom penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got a 3rd and 8 that should have been overturned, a 3rd and 8 that should have been incomplete, and a 3rd and 8 where we would have been in good shape, and there's a phantom penalty, and instead it's a 9-minute drive. Those things have impacts, right? That has an impact. If you're not on the field for 9 minutes, are you fresh enough to now get the stop in the last 5 minutes of the game? They're not excuses, right? This is reality.
So let me ask something just real fast. Big 12 referees. Would you say that the officiating, in your opinion, is better or worse than the Pac-12 as you remember it?
I mean, after this week, that was a disappointing game. I don't know how else to say it. The offensive pass interference call that should have been called on Houston and instead goes on Garnes. Now, is there a cabal that's against Arizona football? No, but that particular crew on Saturday, they had a horrific game. And I think that they should be reviewed and they should be scored on that. And that crew shouldn't work together again. The illegal procedure to finish the game on the final drive, again, we're not dummies when we've watched football as long as we have. That is an illegal procedure or illegal motion 100% of the time. The running back was not doing, that it's a false start. How they pick up that flag or review it, those are 4 calls, though, that have an impact on the game. And it just seemed like in this one, they all went against us.
Yeah, Brent Brennan was asked about, did he submit a couple of those calls to the Big 12 or to the league? And he said yes. And they said, what do they say? And Brent Brennan just kind of smiled and basically said, I didn't want to talk about it. So, yeah,
and then there is no rewind button, so it doesn't do much good. But as a fan, I got to tell you, did that impact the game 100%? And I think a Houston fan would be able to tell you the same thing if they're being honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to talk about Noah Fafita because I think I'm really impressed with him overall this season. I think he made a big jump from last year. He looks more himself. He doesn't make all the plays, but I think he's a very disciplined quarterback. He doesn't he doesn't get the team beat by himself, if that makes sense. He'll take a sack, he'll throw the ball away. If it's if the defender's close, he'll throw the ball so only his receiver has a chance to catch it. And he made some great throws and some good decisions. I think he already has more touchdowns total than he did last year. What are your thoughts on Noah Fafita 7 games into the season?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. And going back to Eric's question to start off our interview tonight, if a fan is out after right now, get back in. 7 games, and let's look at what Noah Fafita and Seth Dagey have done. And if that doesn't get you excited, because they're learning how to play together. This is a new offensive system that was just installed in the spring. And the synergy and just the future, to me, again, Barmore steps up out of nowhere. And now all of a sudden we've got a tight end that's 6'5" or 6'6". Seth Dagey is getting more familiar with the offense and where he wants to go. And that is led by one guy, and that's number 1. And so I know it was frustrating last year because we had heard so much about Noah's arm and his will to win and his drive, and it just obviously didn't work. In this particular system, this is the Noah that we saw as a freshman and then some. I think he's playing at the best level that he already has or that he ever has. And to your point, he's not hurting the team, and we can't jinx that, but I mean, he is making good decisions. He's getting the ball off, especially in this game, on time. And yes, is it frustrating per se that Trace Spivey is not targeted more? Well, you could make that case, but okay, who's not filling that void? Hunter, I mean, he'll make a few catches. To me, hasn't had the biggest impact, but Hudson's been fantastic.
Yeah,
Nunu Watley struggled against BYU, but he made some fantastic plays in this particular game on getting things to him in a simple manner and then letting his speed and elusiveness take a 2-yard screen and turn it into 9 to 15 yards. So I think that there's some weapons there, and Noah is getting more comfortable on a weekly basis. And again, it's a what have you done for me lately type of business. Yeah. We got to go into Colorado, and we've got to keep continuing to improve. But I see no reason that we should be extremely excited about where the offense is going.
Last question for you, Barrett. Appreciate your insight as always. I know you watch the game as a former player and an analyst. Tell me a couple of guys who you've seen who maybe haven't done a lot so far this season, who you think may be poised to break out or have an even bigger impact in Arizona's final 5 games of the season.
Shane, I mean, here's the thing. That is a very tough question for me because I think if you go position by position, you could almost have a smile on your face with the impact that everybody's had. I mean, Kedrick and Mahdi from the running back position are different types of runners, both tremendously impactful. We just talked about Noah. Okay, the wide receivers, it's a little bit of a who's hot right now. I think in the BYU game, Coach Daggy talked about the fact that Chris Hudson was the guy that was hot and he was cooking. You're going to work towards doing that. So the wide receiver position, I think itself, we've got 4 or 5 guys that, and even some of the freshmen that had big catches this past week. The offensive line, again, if you can't talk about the improvements that Coach Brennan has made to this program and look at what Coach Oglesby has done and the offensive line between Ty Buchanan just playing at an ultra high level and Kayana DeCombra coming in at center and just taking care of business there, and Tristan Bounds at right tackle, Chuba coming in at left guard. 4 of the 5 guys are new this year. And is there anybody in the state of Arizona that's an Arizona Wildcat fan that is talking about Coach Oglesby being fired this year? Not one. And yet last year, right, they had the pitchforks out and talking about how this guy had no business being an offensive line coach. So I think that's important to talk about how quickly things can change as a fan when things are going the right way. The defensive line, I'll just wrap it up real quick. The D line, again, Tia Savea, he's not flashy, but he's a rock in the middle. I think that Riley Wilson is still a guy that can splash and play an explosive level, and Kennedy is another guy that's twitchy. So those 2 linebackers to me are probably the ones that are going to have a big impact on the second half of the season because they make big plays. You know, Riley against BYU, I think he had 2 huge sacks. Kennedy is, again, just explosive in a lot of different ways. But on the back end, Javion Cole, Dansby, and then the 3 safeties are just playing at a high level. So when you're asking me, like, who's the surprise so far, I think they're all surprisingly playing at a very high level. So I don't think there is a hidden gem at this point that really is going to blast off throughout the second half of the season. I think it's important that they all just continue to play at a high level.
All right, Barrett, 5 games left. Arizona has 3 on the road, 2 at home. How many do they win?
I think that you win 3 of those. And here's the reason. I think that Colorado is a game that to me is it's a must-win game. You have to win that game. Okay. And I don't get negative very often, but we've got to prove to the program that we can win on the road. And that's a game that we've got to be able to win. I think Baylor is a very beatable team. And I think Kansas is going to make us work because Lance Leipold, they run the ball physically, and they're going to make us work. Those 3 are the games to me that we can and should win. The other 2, again, Arizona State, it's going to be a dogfight. It always is. And then the last one, of course, would be Cincinnati. And Cincinnati right now, they look really good. So, but it's 60 minutes, and we'll see if they're playing at the same high level, at that point in time that they are right now. So, but I think we can go 3-2 in those 5 games that are remaining. I really do. And again, it's a caveat, but I know that Coach Gonzalez and the defensive coaches are attacking the scheme right now to make sure that we can shore up that run defense. But I think we're clicking and we're real close.
Appreciate your honesty. Really, as always, we're glad to have you on. You're the best that we, are our favorite to have on when it comes to football. And we have a lot of great guests, but we always appreciate talking to you. You call it like you see it, good and bad. So great catching up with you, and I'm sure we'll talk to you once or twice in November.
Bear down for life, guys.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for all at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, Shane, always great to catch up with Barrett. He was honest, and I appreciate that about him. Also, I'm going to be honest that last week you stopped it. I had a good week in week 7. In week 8, you got 9 points. I got 7. We do 1 point for a spread pick, 1 point for an upset special cover, 1 point if they win outright, and 2 points for Arizona's game, which there isn't one this week. We are now tied.
But my pessimism about Arizona paid off last week. I got back to normal picking against the Wildcats, and it worked out.
You got back to basics, right?
Yep.
All right, let's give upset special. Now, Shane, you have Memphis plus 3.5 against UCF. You know their quarterback, former Colorado guy, Brendan Lewis, got hurt.
I did not know that, but I'm going to stick with it anyway because you put me on the spot here.
Okay.
Look. I've had a lot of luck picking some slight home underdogs, and so I'm going to stick with it. Memphis was undefeated coming off its first loss. I think they're gonna be focused and ready for a big matchup with USF, even though my confidence level just dropped by about 50% after you took. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to take Memphis to win outright.
I'm going to go with a really crazy one here. South Carolina is getting 11.5 at home against Alabama. Listen to this series of games in a row for South Carolina. At LSU, they lost by 10. Home against Oklahoma, they lost by 19. They host Alabama this week. Then they're at Ole Miss, who's number 8. At Texas A&M, who's number 3. That is 5 straight teams in a row that are ranked. A lot harder than what Arizona dealt with in 2023. I'm not going to compare it.
Yeah.
But they're 0-2 thus far. They have a quarterback who could go high in next year's draft or the year after in Lenore Sellers. I think they give Alabama a game, not only cover the 11.5, I could put Alabama on upset alert, so I'm going there. Oh. We're going to go quickly this week. We don't have an Arizona game. You and I agree. We're taking Ole Miss plus 4.5 against Oklahoma in a ranked versus ranked Oklahoma as at home. I'll let you comment all at once here. We have 3 SEC games. We have Missouri at Vanderbilt, who's -3. We're both taking Vandy. And we have Texas A&M -2.5 at LSU. And we both think LSU is going to get it done. Any comments on those 3 games?
No, the last one you mentioned, I think this has A&M's first loss of the season written all over it. They struggled against Arkansas last weekend. LSU's coming off a bitter loss to Vanderbilt. It's at LSU. I'm a little surprised A&M's favored. I feel pretty good about that one. And I'm a Vandy believer now, Eric. I feel like this is a game that at this point they should win against Missouri. I think this is actually kind of like a college football playoff elimination game. Like whoever loses is probably on the outside looking in, and whoever wins is on the inside track. But Vandy's a great story, so I'll be pulling for them, and I think they win.
I think enough. I've seen enough of Missouri. They probably should have lost last week. They held on and against Auburn, and I think Vanderbilt is legit, but I still don't think Vanderbilt makes college football playoff. I think LSU A&M is an interesting game. If A&M wins this game, they have an inside track to making the college football playoff. Any team that's 10-2 in a power conference, especially the SEC, is in good shape.
Oh yeah.
You and I are both taking Kansas State on the road at Kansas. Kansas is -3. We're both taking Iowa State at home -2.5 against BYU. So here's where we differ in Big 12 games. Texas Tech, who just lost with a backup quarterback to ASU, is giving 38.5 at home, Shane, to Oklahoma State. I gave you the rule last week. You cannot pick Oklahoma State in any game. 38.5 points. You're taking them. I'm not.
Yeah, well, let me go back to the BYU game because I keep predicting their downfall and it keeps not happening. So I'm going to hope that 3 times is a charm. Iowa State's lost 2 straight, but they're very difficult to beat at home. They're coming off a bye, so I think Iowa State snaps BYU's undefeated record. The Oklahoma State game, I can't tell you how much I hate this line. I feel like a sucker falling for the bait with Oklahoma State and this kind of point spread, but I refuse to learn my lesson, Eric. 38.5 is so much. I think Oklahoma State covers somehow, some way. Tech wins by 5 touchdowns, and it's not quite enough.
Shane, I can't. I mean, yours is more logical. I just can't do it.
I know.
Baylor at Cincinnati. The Bearcats are favored by 5.5. Don't you think they should be favored by more? I think Baylor is going to keep this one close, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was a letdown game for Cincinnati. You disagree?
Well, maybe, but think about Arizona being favored against Houston, and then the line coming down against Iowa State. That didn't really work out well for the Wildcats either. But look, speaking of how wrong I've been about things, you asked before the season which coach in the Big 12 is most likely to be fired, and I picked Scott Satterfield, whose Bearcats have won 6 in a row and are a field goal loss to Nebraska away from being undefeated. So I think their next loss comes in their next game at Utah, but I think they win this one by at least a touchdown against Baylor, and Baylor. I think it is right up there with Arizona for being arguably the most average power team in the country at the moment.
You and I are both taking Utah minus 14.5 against Colorado. Utah at home is a different animal than they are on the road. Surprised they lost to BYU, though. We disagree on a 14.5 point line. You have TCU minus 14.5 at West Virginia. I'm taking Rich Rod's team. Got to show up one week, don't they? I mean, this team obviously is getting smoked. I think at home, TCU letdown spot off a big win against Baylor. I think West Virginia keeps this one within 10 points.
Yeah, I mean, you say West Virginia's got to show up at some point. I think they already did against Pitt, and that was it. I keep picking against West Virginia, and it keeps working. I'm a simple man. I think West Virginia's still deep in rebuilding mode. I think Josh Hoover, and TCU find a way to win by at least 17 points.
And finally, ASU gets the benefit of playing Houston the week after Arizona wore them down. ASU is minus 8.5. I don't think that's enough points. I think they win this game by at least 14. ASU's schedule is favorable enough to where they could run the table, with the exception. I mean, there's a game at Iowa State. Other than that, I think ASU should be favored most of the way. That game against Texas Tech was huge for them.
Well, so trivia question. When's the last time ASU lost a home game?
Was it when Arizona beat them in 2023?
Last time they lost was by 36 points to Arizona. But yeah, I agree with you. With a healthy Sam Leavitt, this should be a comfortable win for ASU. Houston's not going to have nearly as easy a time running the ball against the Sun Devils as they did against Arizona. So I think ASU wins by at least a couple scores.
Well, this is our final week until August 2026, where we're not going to be picking basketball games, I believe, of some kind. Could be wrong. That we have next week's show, we're going to be picking Arizona, Florida. We're going to be picking Arizona, Colorado in football. And November, I think, is the best sports month of the year, right there, October, November. And I am excited just to get to it. I mean, we got a lot of things to get excited about. Let's hope the football team gets to the postseason. That's what we want to see. And the basketball team does a lot better in the non-conference than they did last year. That was not our favorite. It's going to be fun, Shane. Always enjoy the debate. Thanks to our buddy Barrett Baker for joining us. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.